Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Hubbard gets hard time. Also, the V-Team takes a look at an education conspiracy. And Governor Robert Bentley, he wants his love shack, his luxury resort. I mean, what's next?
It floats back to you. Love boat. Soon we'll be making another run. The love boat promises something for everyone. Set a course for adventure, your mind on a new romance.
More like the Titanic, I would think. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics. With your host, Bill Brett. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hey, Good morning.
Good morning.
It was, in many ways, a tragic but historic day in Alabama politics. This week, Mike Hubbard was sentenced to 4 years hard time and 16 years of probation. Claire, you were there.
Yes, I was there, and I think there's a lot of scuttlebutt, and I know Friday, this is Sunday, but I know Friday afternoon WSFA did a telephone poll, or let viewers call in and do a poll, and 81% of the polling people said that Mike Hubbard was let off lightly in his sentencing. And it could have been harder, as we know, but the bottom line is he is going to serve some real hard time, and he is going to get 16 years of probation. A lot of people feel like he's gotten special treatment.
Well, you know, and I would agree with them. I think there's a different law for the average person, and there's a different law for the political elite. I mean, Jack, 4 years of hard time in state prison was pretty tough.
It's
though.
pretty tough. I was at having an early lunch on Friday, and there was a table of like 12 women who all work for a state agency. I won't say which one, but I just had, because I just heard the sentence. So what do y'all think? And most of them said, well, that's about right. And one lady said, that's not enough time.
Right.
There were a lot of people even in the press corps that felt let down by this verdict because we had all been right there. We'd been there every minute of this trial. We had seen how outrageous what he'd done with the overwhelming evidence. And I think more than anything, they're upset about the appeals bond.
Yeah, Judge Walker is letting him out pending an appeal. And, you know, I don't know how long the appeal will go on. Some people think it may go quickly. I think they drag it out.
Oh, I think they drag it out, and I think that he'll file for a new trial, a retrial. He'll file for that, then he'll file for the appeal. It could be anywhere, you know, from a minimum to 1 to as many as 5 years.
But remember now too, he gave him the hardest years on, the ones that are concurrent, are APCI and capital cups. Those two had more than overwhelming evidence. Right. And I think the reason Judge Walker did that is because those are the two least likely to be overturned on an appeal.
And the third one that's least likely is the money he received from Stearns aging.
Correct.
There is no arguing the Friends Amendment.
Right. Now, he got
privilege.
10 years with a split of 2 on that one, but it's running consecutively. That's the only difference in that charge.
And he got a $20,000 fine on that one with Stearns aging as well.
Right.
Well, I mean, you know, 4 years, 16 years probation, supervised probation, and $210,000 is not a light sentence. I agree with everyone that agrees that it's too light. I think they should have done more. The state asked for 5, he got 4. I thought it was very interesting that the state brought up the fact that Roy Johnson was given 60 months or 5 years, and by being given 60 months, he could not have gotten out on parole either. And he got less than Roy Johnson. Roy Johnson did a whole lot less than Mike Hubbard.
But you know what the judge said was, well, this was a federal case and a state case mixed together. And as we all know, and maybe hopefully the viewers know, but you know, the states sentence and structure and time is a lot less than what the federal government can do.
But he still
is.
gave him, Judge
Right.
Walker himself gave him 60 months of state
Right.
time, even though it ran concurrently with the federal time.
Well, and all his character witnesses that were there today, I mean, they were parading them in and out, doing everything they could. And you hate to say it, but the bottom line is he got special treatment because of who he was.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
there's no question about that.
I mean, they had the mayor of Opelika was there. They
preacher,
had
his banker.
preacher, his banker, his best friend banker, and then they had Representative Mike Rogers was there, and he brought his hair.
he brought some very shiny hair that
Well,
that
let me
day.
just, let's get to that.
Well, normally he flips his wig, so you know it's.
I don't know about all that, but I will tell you something. Congressman Mike Rogers was egregious on all that. I've got to say that.
Absolutely.
And this is the second time he stood out like that and, denounced other Republicans and denounced our Attorney General and the process. He
Yeah.
tried to joke it with Matt Hart. I mean, he was out of line.
Claire, you and I talked about this afterwards. It's almost like he was treating the gallery like idiots. He said, well, I don't see why we should let a rapist or a murderer out of prison to find a bed for Mike Hubbard. Like they were going to have to let somebody go to
Oh,
put him in
please.
prison.
That's
He
ridiculous.
said that on the stand, Jack.
But he was just playing to the emotions. But it was just egregious.
However, when he made that one comment and the audience clapped, the judge did not.
Well,
he
and that's
snapped
what-
and said, y'all either pipe it down or you're out.
Well, that's why I was trying to get in here. And Jack, one of the things he did is again said that the prosecution had railroaded the jury, that this was nothing more than a witch hunt. I mean, he made those same accusations again.
Well, he
I mean,
didn't say Chicago-style mafia
No, he
this
didn't go
time, but
that-
No, he didn't
said
go that
before.
far.
He-
Well, I think Mr. Rogers may be drawing an opponent
Good.
for his next election.
I
I've
certainly hope so.
Heard from some people in East Alabama that they are aggressively searching for a replacement.
Good. Well, he needs to go.
He does.
He has been an embarrassment. It was a very interesting day down there. It was hot as usual. We waited outside for a long time for the Attorney General to come out, people to come out. They never came out. Bill Baxley came out and said what he said in court, that he, in all his years, he'd never seen anyone more innocent than Mike Hubbard, and that they were going to aggressively fight this, and they would be exonerated in
You
the
ask
end.
anybody in jail, and they're the most innocent people ever lived.
Well, I would say that General Baxley hadn't spent much time in Montgomery in the last 8 years, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Well, there's
yeah.
something else I want to point out. That courtroom was jam-packed full.
Overflowed?
It was overflowed. It was overflowed so much that Rob Riley and the two gentlemen that were with him were turned back from entering into the gallery and sent to the other room. That's how.
Well, they didn't
that-
want to sit with the peons, though, really. There was 4 chairs left. They didn't want to sit with the peons. I really got to get to this. The sentencing came down at around 12 o'clock. At 12:02, Baxley filed a motion with the court to have this overturned because of jury misconduct. And he says that the AG can't investigate it because they're prosecuting Mike. And he says that the Aaliyah can't do it because Bentley was a witness. So guess who he wants to investigate the...
Ethics.
No. Anybody?
The jury. Let's see. Wait. He's in Lee County, right?
Lee
Isn't he?
County.
The sheriff.
The sheriff of Lee County. He wants to investigate
really?
jury
Now,
misconduct.
to me,
Jack.
that's laughable.
I mean, that really is.
Jack, we got about 30 seconds. You got any thoughts on? I mean, this is a guy who thinks Mike's still innocent.
Didn't I check? Wasn't he in a
I think
video
if Jay
or
Jones
TV?
had his way, Mike could just come live with him for 4 years.
Well,
Kind of do a few things around the house.
Every sheriff needs a good convict to live with him. Maybe he can wash his car.
Trustee, they call me.
Trustee.
trustee.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Beth,
Hey, good to be here.
how are you?
Doing well. I'm still reeling from these sentences.
Yeah, what do you think? What's your take on this?
I mean, it sounds like it's like the Costco deal. Like, you know, you commit more crimes, you get the sentences in bulk, so you get a better deal on it. I mean, it looks to me like if he got 2 years per count, he's really only serving the same sentence he'd be doing if he had only been convicted of 2 felonies. So if you're going to go big, go home, or go big or go home on this kind of stuff, it looks like.
Well, you know, and that's one of the things I worried about, is that you've got this low risk, high reward. I mean, really.
Well, thank goodness he was indicted on 12. I mean, convicted on 12 counts.
Yeah, I
think
agree.
we would have never gotten what he's gotten now.
I agree, but you know, what kind of message does it send, Beth? I mean,
Well, it's not a good one. You know, when you look at criminal sentencing, judges are allowed to look at aggravating or mitigating factors. And the thing is, you know, there's a list in the code of mitigating factors a judge can look at. And one of those things is, does the defendant express remorse? Do they understand that what they did was wrong? He's still saying this is a witch hunt. He has no apology, anything for any of this that he's done.
well, Baxley said he didn't need to apologize because he hadn't done anything wrong.
Yeah, I know.
Jack?
But then on the other hand, his preacher said that he had a lot of remorse and was very sorry about what he had done. So there were some conflicting signals there.
Yeah. Well, and then Mike Rogers said he was a first-time offender. So I mean,
Well, yeah, so does it make you a first-time offender if you commit all your crimes at once, or
Yeah, I
if you
guess
commit
so.
them one after the other?
well, you know, one of the things I found very, very interesting is that everybody there who took the stand for Mike said that it was a different Mike that the prosecution had portrayed than the Mike they knew. Well,
That's because he covered up everything for his own lobbyists, his own best friends to not know he was being paid by APCI, whatever it's called, all those months.
Well, the other thing is, he was the speaker here. In his hometown, he was a different man than when he came to Montgomery. He was a very different man than he was in Lee County.
I mean, because
I'll
just
give him that.
personally, he's a vicious thug.
Well,
I mean,
he's very vindictive. Nobody will denounce that at all.
What it comes down to is that, you know, he did a lot behind closed doors that people weren't aware of. And that's where, you know, when we look at who the next speaker is going to be, we have to look at how we can take this and make this a more open and transparent process, not just for that individual person, but for the entire process. For
and that
people
brings
are
up a
playing
big
along.
question I want to ask you about, Beth. I go back to you on this. You know, we've called for it, and now Craig Ford's called for it. You know, the Republicans signed a loyalty pledge under Mike Hubbard that they would stick with whatever was settled. Whoever was picked as speaker in the caucus was elected on the floor. The Democrats want to say there's a lot of Republicans that want to leave the process open. I mean, what are you hearing?
Well, you know, the whole process was designed to make sure that Mike Hubbard could stay speaker and keep his bills going through. And with Democrats in a super minority, if they can pick off a few Republicans that will vote with them on some things, they can actually get some goals accomplished. So what this does is it prevents any moderate Republicans or Republicans who represent a district that doesn't necessarily agree with what the caucus's position is. They can't vote for their district. They have to vote the way that the caucus votes.
Well, and okay, that's the way the dictatorship is run. From talking to a lot of people that I have spoken to that are running for speaker and just talking to House members, they want to change the rules. They know that the rules of dictatorship have been too much, and most everybody I've talked to that's running for speaker wants to change the rules. Because, you know, some of them said to me, you know, hey, when Kim Ewing was there, said, you know, none of us even ever got a chance to even get anything on the calendar, and it shouldn't be that way.
It really
And
shouldn't.
so I think that anybody that's running for the speaker, I'm questioning about one person because I think he's controlled by Riley and Hubbard and some people like that. But I think that most of them want some transparency and open door, and they want a fair shake for everybody.
See, I think it's all campaign promises, and the pledge that needs to be signed is whoever the speaker is owes the caucus and the House of Representatives itself that promise put into action, not just these, because every politician makes promises when they're running for office.
No.
They never actually stand up and fulfill them.
Well, Jack, I want to move on to the next subject, and this is about our governor who has decided that the state taxpayers should pay for his and Ken Stabler lawsuit that's been filed against, or Spencer Collier filed a civil suit against them, and they want the state to pay $150,000 for their legal fees in a civil case.
Well, I might have a difference of opinion than most of y'all.
Yeah,
I mean, he did fire him in his capacity as governor.
Right.
I agree with you, Jack.
I believe the state ought to pay for that bill because I know he's being sued civilly.
Right.
As governor and as individual. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, he's been just, no, it's just
individual
as
capacity.
individual.
But he is as Jack is saying, he is the governor of the state of Alabama, and if he were not the governor of the state of Alabama,
wouldn't have
this
happened.
would not have occurred. So
Right.
I'm
Right.
with you in the fact that I think the state
The
should
difference,
pay.
though, the difference there is that if Bentley were to resign from office tomorrow, and any lawsuit in his individual capacity goes with him. So that lawsuit attaches to Bentley as a person, regardless of the office he holds. Whereas if he's sued in his official capacity, whoever, if he resigns tomorrow, now that lawsuit transfers to
his
KI.
successor, yeah.
Right, and so that's the difference is, are we going to be paying legal fees for somebody who might not be governor at the time this
that's
case
why I said I have
concludes?
mixed feelings
Well,
about
and
it.
I think this goes back, in my mind, to the same thing. He's got that honey shack down there that he's refurbishing. He's pushing through this massive resort deal, and it's all about using money from BP that, it looks to us and it looked to Charlie Grimsley and lots of other folks that he doesn't have a right to use.
But wait a minute, now. When you talk about the beach sugar shack or whatever, the last 3 or 4 governors have been wanting to do that. They need.
They didn't start building it
restore
without appropriations. That's the difference.
No, we're talking about the mansion, the
The
governor's
Oh, not
mansion.
Gulf State. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah,
I mean, different sugar
I have
shack
no
at the
problem with
beach.
that. I think the governor ought to have a getaway place.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
in
And this
days
beach
gone
condo,
by,
I mean, you've got all the guys from Mobile and Baldwin County. They're all for this. I mean, it needs to be renovated down there. I mean,
I get the idea that we need.
don't blame it just on Bentley.
But this is a
Well,
time where we're closing
Bentley
driver's
is
license
using money
offices.
that's not been appropriated by the legislature. That's a constitutional issue. Now, I hear that several lawmakers are now joining that lawsuit because the judge said that Charlie Grimsley didn't have standing because this was not public money. How is it not public money?
well, it is public
is public
money.
money.
It's given to the state
Yeah, goes in.
from an oil spill that damaged the state.
Well, this judge said, "Oh no, it's not public money."
What judge is it?
I can't remember, but all money that's government is public money. It doesn't matter whether BP gave it or
And the
or we
idea
gave
they're
it.
building a resort, as I've said it 100 times, follow the money. Somebody's getting rich off
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Whether it's Rebecca Mason or anybody in her family or some of the Riley folks, because you watch who's lobbying to have this done.
And all the while, they're cutting the docs on Medicaid. We got about 20 seconds. I mean, we're going to cut doctors' pay on Medicaid, but we can take that oil spill money and just build a luxury hotel that
That's all
nobody
this comes
needs.
down to is priorities. If you want to know a state's priorities, look at their budget. And what we're saying is people can be dying with lack of health care, but the governor's going to have a cozy place to go lay his head at night. It's ridiculous.
Well, I'm glad you said head. All right, we're going to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
That's got the
What
last
else
word.
would she have said beside
I
her?
don't know. I mean, I was worried about her. You know how she is.
She'll go off on it.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
It's time to take a road trip.
In Alabama, the road and the restaurants are calling. We've elevated barbecue to an art form, a meat masterpiece. Fine dining your thing? National awards are putting us on the map.
Because everything's fresh and local.
And if you like your dinner with a view, well, you can't beat this. Alabama has a road trip with your name on it.
Which one you gonna take?
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. There is some disturbing things going on in our state.
Really?
Yeah, and they're not just happening in courtrooms. They're happening in classrooms.
Well, about to.
And in
Or about to.
boardrooms.
Yeah, and boardrooms. In April, we're looking for a new superintendent of education. Tommy Bice retired under questionable circumstances, in my mind. But there's been a guy in there, Philip Cleveland. His tenure's coming up. He cannot stay in that seat. He's with the economic development deal. And we heard, and we believe these people, they're very close to this issue, that they are pushing Gina Ross, who works with Children's and Family Services. She was appointed by Bentley.
The mother of lobbyist John Ross.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Who's in with Dak Swaddock, who's very close to Billy Canary and Bob Riley.
And Mike Hubbard.
Yeah,
And I think it's egregious, and it would be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, and I agree. But here's what we have heard from people very close, that Riley, Canary, and Dax have convinced the governor that they put Gina Ross in there, and then what they're going to do is they're going to undercut the Board of Education with this committee that they put together and push through education reform that's basically going to turn it into a Soviet-style work system. You know, by the time you're in the 6th grade, you have to pick a profession or a vocation. They're going to train you.
And to help their charter school clients and all like that, that they're all on the payroll.
They're trying to move K through 12 and post-secondary under the Department of Commerce.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
But the crazy thing is, Terry Collins writes this email saying that Gina Ross is the best thing since sliced bread if you can't keep Philip Cleveland, and that Greg Pouncey, who's been with the state for 100 years, is a lowlife, basically. I mean, it was pretty outrageous.
She even goes so far to say that there was a letter from the speaker to Tommy Beisler, who was still superintendent, saying that Craig Pouncey was banned from the State House.
That was not true.
That was not true. That was not true. But it was in that email, and from our research, that letter never existed.
What's Terry Collins' most famous accomplishment? She sponsored a bill that if you can take wine to go from a restaurant if you drank part of it,
well,
you're
she agreed
entitled
with
to.
everything Mike Hubbard had to say.
Really.
Well, she's just their puppet, and because Mike Hubbard is dead
Gone.
and his cronies are gone, she's trying to step in and continue to do
Well,
for
let's
the
remember,
Rileys and the Hubbards.
she was the one that had the
one of his
Accountability
girls.
Act. She
Yeah,
was a
she's
part
been
of the
toting
charter
the water.
school deal.
Which had the SGOs, which have profited Bob Riley, which it will continue to profit
One of
Bob
which has
Riley
failed
as long
recently,
as
hasn't
Del
it?
Marsh is running the Senate.
Yeah. Well, it's just, you
Well,
know.
education people better look out, and these state board members and everybody, and it would be egregious if Miss Ross was
Ms. Ross
superintendent.
only has a master's degree. She's never been a superintendent. She's never been a principal. As far as I can
She's not
understand, she's
qualified.
really not managed anything. And do we need her being the top dog in education?
Well, I hear she's a
No.
nice person.
I'm sure she's got
sure
good
she
manners.
is.
I do know her. She's a very nice person. But they need to talk to people like Ed Richardson and people like that and get them to pull together somebody who would be a qualified superintendent of education. She's just simply not qualified. She's
Well,
connected
Now,
to-
Senator Dial sent out a letter this
I was
week.
going to say that, but y'all won't let me get a
Oh,
word
I'm
in
sorry.
edgewise. That's,
The girls are fired up.
Yeah, we
after
are.
all.
Can you
Well,
tell?
you know, y'all were inspired.
We had some fun on Friday.
Yeah, we did.
Well, Senator Dial sent out a letter saying, look, special interests shouldn't be picking the next superintendent, right?
He did. And he said that, he knew Craig Pouncey and he thought he would be the best selection for this position. And that if they're going to let special interests in on education, then this is just the wrong way for it to go.
Well, Larry Lee wrote an article in our publication saying that Craig Pouncey's sin was that he actually stood up for public education in a House committee meeting. I mean, when's that a sin, Jack?
Well, it's not a sin, and you've got to ask yourself the question, why does Bob Riley continue to get involved with money in State Board of Education races? He wants his folks in there so he can continue getting rich off of the system.
Off the SGOs and off of charter
And
schools.
his boy up at BCA, what's his
Started
name?
that
I can't, I'm so mad I
education
can't. Billy Canary can influence the legislature.
While his wife is sitting at RSA trying to influence the retirement
trying to
system.
take over RSA.
Yeah, I mean, it's just outrageous.
It's going to be a sad day if they let somebody like Miss Ross, who is unqualified to be the superintendent of this state.
We've got real problems in this state with our education, and we need somebody that can step in there, know what they're doing, and be able to get some solutions
Well,
started.
I don't necessarily agree you got to have a doctorate in education. I think you need to be a damn general in the Army retired to run our education system in
Well,
Alabama.
Gerald Dial knows that all very well.
I know
I
he
think
is
he's
a
got
general,
some merit
But
about that.
I'm sorry, and Gina Ross, and I'm sure, because I like John. I know he was raised by a good family. She's a great lady, I'm sure. But just the idea that one of the biggest lobbyists in Alabama is having his mother pushed to be the head of the State Department of Education is.
Who was tied to
I
Hubbard?
mean, it's. I mean,
And
Mostly
there's
tied to
nepotism in there as well. I mean, you're talking about a mother and a son.
Well, it's kind of crazy all the way around. I tell you, one of the things that just bothers me. I'm glad Senator Dial's on it.
Did they not see what happened? Did John not see what happened in Lee County last week?
He was the first witness.
Well, I know, but he must have forgotten that already.
Yeah, well, no, the only person that showed up over there was Tom Watley.
We've
maybe
got
one
less
other.
than 2 minutes, and I want to get into one other issue, and that is, Hubbard's still appealing, but he has no power. You do have Riley and Canary, and that cabal is still out there. Jack, our state is damaged. We've seen once again, even with this tough sentence, the privileged are favored over everybody else. I mean, what are, if any, steps can be taken
I
to
don't know,
change the
because
system?
you have speaker candidates like Mac McCutcheon, whom I understand is being pushed by Riley and Billy Canary. I met with Steve Klaus. He had the decency to call me after I had berated him in a column, and we met for coffee, but I was still disturbed. He explained the 23 words, but I'm disturbed by the fact he said, I won't make any committee changes if I'm speaker. Well, then, hell, why bother?
Well, and Mac McCutcheon has been telling people he's not Riley and Canary, and that's one of the problems.
He might not. Well, he doesn't call me,
He's-
so that's fine. I'm nobody.
Well,
Yeah, but I from every sense I get, and I think this whole thing with Barry Moore was a ploy to throw people off to hurt Klaus and help Mac McCutcheon. That's what I think.
Well, and that's possible too. I have been told by people that I consider good folks, their friends, that they swear that Mac is not being backed by the Canary or Riley. But again, we don't know if there's a shell game. There's always a shell game.
Yeah, but
you know
wait a minute.
that.
Didn't Mike Rogers and Matt Hart talk about the pep rally or the press conference
They did.
on
Oh, yeah,
Friday?
I know.
Oh, yeah.
And he wasn't McCutcheon's the head cheerleader at the
Yeah,
pep
he was
rally
like the
press
MC, I think.
I know, but
And then you have Alan Harper and Lynn Greer. I mean, come on.
Well, no, I do.
And Phil Williams is not making any noise at all.
No, there's no noise. Before we leave, we've only got a few seconds. We have to remember those that were lost in Dallas this past week. Our hearts and our thoughts are with you, all the people of Dallas. We need civility and to stick together, or this country is going to tear apart. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.